Here we go. So hello, everyone. I'm Jessie Perkins, Executive Director of the Bethel Area Chamber of Commerce. So thank you for tuning into our third Lunchbox Zoom with the Mahoosic Sustainable Tourism Committee. After we spent the past two meetings getting up to speed on the work that has been done since our Community Destination Academy, today we'll spend time looking towards the future. A few of you reached out unsolicited after our last meeting to say that you wanted to be among the founding partners of our sustainability pledge, and I'm so excited that you're excited, and that shows that we're on the right track. I'd like to introduce today Amy Scott, who many of you know already, but she has recently experienced a transition in her role. Formerly, she was the Executive Director of Corp, a local organization focused on collaboration among nonprofits, but now she's officially working for the Northern Forest Center, and a major part of her role will be to coordinate the work behind the pillars that we're going to talk about today. It's huge to have someone with her skill set behind all this, and I'm so glad to have her on the team in that role. So as we move along, if you're interested in more detail about anything that we present today, want to catch up offline, please get in touch with me personally at jessie@bethelmaine.com, and I'm sure any of our speakers today would say the same. So if you're not speaking, make sure that you're on mute so that we don't pick up on your background noise, and a reminder that this session is being recorded. Our agenda is pretty tight again today, and here's an overview. So first, we will go into a recap on the pillars. This all came from input and research that was all a part of our Community Destination Academy. Then we'll get into a review on the individual pillars, which include regional collaboration with me at Purcell, unique visitor experiences with me, environmental leadership with Barbra Barrett of the Maine Mineral and Gem Museum, workforce and housing development with Karolyn Castaldo of Sunday River, and community and visitor engagement with Vern Maxfield in the town of Woodstock. Then we'll go into next steps and how you can participate, and update on our pledge launch and pillar meetings. And at 12:30, we'll stop the presentations, but we'll go into about 15 minutes of Q&A. Please feel free to sign out if you need to, but we'd love to see you stick around if you can. And at 12:45, we will adjourn. I've pasted the agenda in the chat so that we can follow along. And now I will say, take it away, David.
Okay, Jessie, thank you. Hello, everybody. So my job today is just to give a bit of a recap on the pillars. So those of you who are involved in the CDA, you'll remember that end of 2019, into the early part of this year, we worked on the development of the vision and the strategic pillars. Then a lot of the work this year has really been dealing with the pledge, which is the outward looking piece. But we want to circle back now and start to rethink about the pillars and start to get some actions there. I'm going to share just a very short slide deck, 5 slides, just to kind of get the visual back in front of us. Okay, so you should be able to see my slideshow now, right? So if you've been on the Zooms, you will have last community Zoom last week. We talked about the Mahoosic Way website. It's got these tabs: the home, our pledge, our vision, and our work. So primarily today we're going to be talking about our work, right? So the pledge we covered last time, the draft of that, and we've taken some feedback, and we're just finishing that up, and we're going to talk about the launch of that at the end of today. But we want to talk about the pillars that fall under this our work section. Just to recap, there was the pledge we talked about, but that's not what we're talking about today, right? So on the website under this our work, there are these 5 key strategic pillars that were identified during the CDA, and they're the ones that people are going to address today. So and this is the way I think about it, this is the foundation for the action that occurs locally that supports the development of the tourism industry in the way you want. So it's the internal regional work that supports the pledge, which is more outward facing. And just to kind of have the one chart on the screen, right? So just to refresh everybody in terms of what the elements were. So, and these 5 big pillars were the areas that people saw as the priority to work on. And in fact, when we did the polling at the Community Summit, all of these came up to be a similar level of importance and urgency. So there was not one that was really prioritised over the other, which is why we're running with all 5 simultaneously. So one is around this concept of building regional collaboration. So building a culture of collaboration, inclusivity in the region, creating shared leadership, regional solutions. That was a really key, I think, sort of behavioural thing that people wanted at the regional level. Some of the project ideas that you can see there, initial actions were around the towns collaborating on shared infrastructure and so on. Looking at implementing obviously the sustainable tourism plan at a regional scale, welcoming communities and so on. And today, Mia is going to talk about that. So community engagement. So this is one of the things that was really actually interesting in the CDA was that people were very conscious of the importance of the community locally supporting the tourism industry. So some people are part of the tourism industry and understand its importance. Other people have other pursuits, maybe forestry industries, all their landowners, etc. But understanding and maintaining a really strong relationship between the residents and their understanding of the importance of tourism, so that it's a supportive type of relationship and mutually respectful, was seen as a really important foundational principle. So the work on this, the idea of this is to keep continuing to build those links and those partnerships between the community, the locals essentially, and the tourism industry. Workforce and housing, so creating unique tourism workforce and housing solutions that enhance the local livability. That's just a big issue that came up over and over. We all know in seasonal tourism locations, housing, workforce housing and workforce becomes a big issue, right? So what was really identified here was a need to be really creative about coming up with some solutions that work for this region. So the idea of this is to get some brains together to have a go at coming up with some creative elements. The next one is environmental leadership. This was a very strong sentiment, I think, that came through the CDA, a real awareness of, I guess, and this is the sort of foundation of the development of the Sustainable Tourism Pledge, this desire to make sure that the location gets protected, but that there's an authenticity that the locals walk the talk, right? So implementing and demonstrating environmentally responsible approaches, and knowing that there's a way to go on that, knowing that right now there's not things like recycling everywhere and so on, but having that as a pillar that's perceived to be important to work on. And then of course, visitor experience, this whole notion of curating these unique visitor experiences based on sustainable tourism principles, which might be different kind of tourism experiences than ones that aren't based on sustainable tourism. So that's the framework, right? So that you'll keep seeing this sort of diagram on the website and in the sustainable tourism plan and so on. This was the basis or the output of a lot of work through the CDA. So it's a really robust framework, we think, in terms of going forward. So to talk a little about each of the pillars more, I'm going to hand it now to Amy Scott.
Well, good morning, everyone. So what is regional collaboration for this area? Some answers include avoiding duplication of effort, increased efficiencies with shared services, making information across the region more accessible, improved access to capital, including grants, and being more fiscally prudent and saving taxpayers money. Survey respondents ranked regional collaboration at the top of their list of pillars as critically important. And a couple of the comments that I just wanted to highlight that people added on their survey responses. One is, we can do what we put our hearts and minds into. There is strength in all four communities working together, and a regional approach is essential. So attendees at the Community Tourism Summit in January expressed significant interest in a 5 to 10 year comprehensive economic development plan that would be adopted and supported by all four towns. And as you saw in the information that David just covered, the plan would or could include solutions to sewer, waste, transportation, broadband, and other issues. These are issues that towns have challenges solving on their own. And these are also issues that don't see borders, don't see town borders. This summer, for example, a regional broadband committee was formed. It includes representatives from all 4 towns, plus the Albany Township. So that's just one example of where we've taken some action already. Cultivating a welcoming and inclusive community was another strategic action that attendees cited. And developing a regional approach to implementing a sustainable tourism plan was also identified as a priority. And as we all know, work on that is already underway. Local government leadership is critical to regional collaboration. And right after the January community meeting at the Bethel Inn, the 4 towns held 2 meetings. One of those meetings was among the town managers, and the other was with all the select boards. This was the first time that all the select boards have actually met together. Unfortunately, the COVID virus called a short halt to some of these meetings, but plans are underway to convene them again. Regional collaboration needs support, though, from the broader community as well. And I'm basically putting out a special call to any of you who would like to be involved in supporting regional collaboration and communication, because it needs everyone's support. So thank you.
Thank you, Mia. It looks like I'm next on the list. So unique visitor experiences. Now this is a really interesting pillar because Bethel really has a lot of unique things to offer. You know, we have a fully year-round tourism economy in a way that a lot of other places don't. So that is step one. I think that's a huge asset for us. And I always say that we have 2 different kinds of visitors. The wintertime visitors, they come, they know what they want to do, they go do it, they turn around, they go home. But in the summer, it's very, or historically it has been very different, because in the summer, everybody takes a vacation. A lot of times they drive around looking for something to do and don't know what they're doing until they get there and they're doing it. And I think that that's kind of what results in overrunning certain high visibility spots. But what the pandemic has done is started training everybody to actually make a plan before they go anywhere. And this sort of changing of habits may really benefit us, because people will actually go seeking out information before they travel in a new kind of way. And so therefore we have the opportunity to curate what we already have, which is a lot. You know, people come here for our hiking, but do they know about the wonderful Maine Mineral and Gem Museum that's just recently opened? So we can create packages in that way. But it's also, we talked about this with the Chamber Board almost a year ago now, it's also a huge business opportunity for new types of guides. Often we think of our Maine guides as hunting, fishing oriented, but boy, people could really use guides for just hiking and sort of the lower tech entry level outdoor experiences, you know, advice on the right kind of gear and actually providing rentals for those kinds of gear and things like that. So just really being like an outdoor coach is I think a huge business opportunity. So I think it's helping people experience what we have to offer is something that would benefit everyone. So anyway, that's my take on unique visitor experiences. And looks like next on the list is environmental leadership, and we're going to turn that to Barbara Barrett of the Maine Mineral and Gem Museum.
Thanks, Jessie. Hello, everybody. So as everyone remembers, when we gathered at the Bethel Inn and asked people to review the pillars, we also asked for their input and handed out a bunch of stars. And so when I talk about what we have developed for this pillar, I just want to mention sort of the highlights and where the most stars ended up on this list. But first and foremost on the list for having an Earth first approach that, you know, is one that's illustrating our values as a region was to ban single-use plastic. And we did that, but now we need to recreate that ban because of COVID. As you know, I think single-use plastic is now on the rise everywhere, including Bethel. So hopefully when we get past this, we can get back to being a town that can say we're proud and a region to have banned single-use plastic. Another really important one that had probably the second largest amount of stars at it from participants was renewable energy, being able to increase the different programs here, including things like electrical vehicle chargers, having solar powered farms. So solar farms, which I think some of you have probably been seeing a lot of emails from different companies to reduce your power bill by using solar farms. And then, yes, wind power. I know that's a controversial one, but it is one that people still have interest in this region. The next one, and the one that received the most input from others, was creating a regenerative agricultural system. And there are so many different ideas around this one and so much creativity and possibility. One which could be done relatively easy is creating a regionalized composting system for all of the towns, a place where people can take their compost, having a community farm and garden and sort of an eco center that's an educational learning hub where people can go and see these practices demonstrated. And attached to that is also, which is in other parts of the regional planning, is that workforce housing again, and having housing that could be something in an eco village of sorts that could be part of that learning center, but kind of killing two birds with one stone and being able to have affordable housing, especially for our seasonal workers. And you know, those seasonal workers could end up becoming full-time residents if we had housing for them. Other things were having a regional conservation commission, having recycling bins on Main Street, and you know, sorting cans instead of just having trash, but also having the ability to recycle when you're around town. Being able to have guided experience that educate and role model all of these different practices and hopefully things that we implement in our towns as we move forward. Transportation was one that really came up quite a bit, and reinstating the rail and having more mass transportation for our small town. But I think everyone has long thought that it would be great to have access to more metropolitan areas by getting the rail back working, since we do have a stop right next to the chamber. Another fun one for dog lovers was being able to have a fenced dog park and having a place for dogs to go. So those are some of the highlights from the environmentally responsible pillar. And my favorite is to be able to have a dark community so that we can all see the night sky better. So I'm not sure who's next. Jessie, can you look for me? Thanks so much.
Sure,
It is.
Barbara. It looks like Karolyn Castaldo with Workforce and Housing Development.
Great. Thanks, guys. So if you've been on the Team Bethel Facebook group at all in the last few years, you've probably seen an overwhelming amount of people looking for housing that can't find it. This is not just a Sunday River issue. This is one that impacts the entire community, tourism and otherwise. But we definitely contribute to it probably the most with the amount of seasonal workers that we do hire. So by talking about sustainable tourism, we can't leave housing out of the equation. It is something that impacts our ability to recruit people who would be assets to the community, as well as to the resort and the tourism side of things. When we surveyed people through the community summit, it was very clear that tourism, workforce, and housing development was a priority. People's confidence that we could actually make something happen was a little bit lower. And the recommendations for people of what the biggest focus should be is really just to create affordable housing. There were no, major other suggestions. So This is one that's definitely going to take a lot of collaboration to make it happen. I know we've been working pretty closely with a few different businesses in the area to be able to offer some team member housing if we could make that more widespread and available to other businesses as well, because I know that others are having struggles hiring people just because they can't find a place to live. That's definitely going to be a big focus of ours, along with all of these other pillars. So that's kind of all I have for that. Jessie, do you mind looking at who's next?
Mute myself. Thank you, Karolyn. Yes, huge issue, and one that was very prominent in the heart and soul process that the whole community went through as well. I mean, this is just something that touches everyone. So thank you for that. Next up is community and visitor engagement with Vern Maxfield. Vern, are you out there? You got to unmute yourself.
I just did. Thank you, Jessie. Good afternoon, everybody. I want to just talk a few minutes about creating community and visitor engagement from a municipal perspective. In creating the community engagement pillar, we discussed a lot of things, and among them was buy-in to the effort by the residents, by the towns, by everyone. I think that's very important to make it all work. We've all got to buy in to the program and have a positive outlook on how it will work. The residents of the 4 towns have to have some ownership in this process to give it an even stronger foundation. And to do that, they've got to be educated, they've got to know about it and begin to see some results. Working together seemed to be the recurring message for the communities of the Mahoosic region. In fact, Mia mentioned this, we were able to bring nearly all of the selectmen and town managers of the 4 towns together for a historic joint meeting. In my 32 years here in Woodstock, I never saw that happen before, and I found it quite exciting to get everybody together. Didn't you, Amy? Amy Scott moderated the meeting for us, and I thought some really good ideas came from that. We talked about how towns could work together in a number of ways. We could improve our area by joining together in planning programs, recreation programs. Bethel is leading the way on recreation, I think, but our other 3 towns are struggling a little bit. So that would be helpful if we could do that. We could work together with fuel and heating, oil purchases, conservation efforts. I know Woodstock has a very active conservation commission, and the other towns do as well. And that's all good, all to the good. We could work together on highway and fire department issues, road paving issues. Maybe we could find some joint ways that we could lower the costs of doing that. And of course, we do have current fire department mutual aid agreements, which are great. Whenever there's a large fire, we all pull together and take care of that issue. Solid waste was another thing that came out of that meeting. That is going to be a more and more expensive thing as the days go on, especially if the single sort doesn't continue to pan out the way we hoped it would. However, as Mia said, all of these plans had to be put on hold 5 weeks after the meeting that we had. And hopefully we can get back together. The hope is to continue to work in tangible ways as soon as we can get together again. I see all this tying into the community destination and Mahoosic pledge, and believe it would make our area stronger as a community and more attractive to visitors, as well as those of us who live here now. The residents of the 4 towns have to have some ownership in the process to give it an even stronger foundation. So I hope anyone listening to these discussions today might want to join in and be a member of one of the pillar committees. The ongoing meetings we are having now have made a good start in making our community stronger. I would ask you to consider joining the effort, and I would be glad to talk with anyone interested after the meeting. Thank you.
That is wonderful, Vern. Thank you for getting us right into that. And I think at one of our most recent meetings, Loretta Powers, the town manager of Bethel, mentioned that there were something like 20 vacancies on the town committees, and how important that is too. I mean, we need volunteerism at all of these levels. So much for your role. that was a great lead into our next bullet point, which is how you can participate. Again, with the support of Amy Scott, we're going to have committees, pillar meetings starting in January. Actually, these first 3 Zooms are really just the intro. Of course, we, want all this work to just sit here. It's just the basis for everything that comes next. And of course, as we all adjust to life now with the pandemic going on and coming out of that, there's plenty of work to be done. So please, Amy's email is ascott@northernforest.org. Amy, maybe you can throw that in the chat. If you have interest in any of these pillars, please get in touch with her, get in touch with me. We're happy to start arranging this and get going right after the holidays. So just quickly, hand it back to David Beurle with an update on the pledge launch and anything else he wants to throw in before we get into the Q&A.
Okay, thank you, Jessie. So the pledge launch is the next sort of major community Zoom step, right? And that's the point at which essentially the website and the pledge goes public, right? So obviously, most of you have been involved in the calls we've been having in the last while, which is developing up the content and sort of ground truthing some of that. The calls out for sort of the founding sustainability partners to be part of that. And I guess, and we don't have an exact date, but we're probably looking at the 6th or the 13th of January, some like a Wednesday, same sort of a deal. But the idea is to have this get some legs, right? And I think you have this opportunity with a launch with the pledge in place and the infrastructure to support it, and then some sort of action teams coming together with us, and probably if there's a strong sign up of sustainability partners or the foundation partners, I think you have an incredible opportunity to amplify what this is all about. So this is all about trying to have visitors integrate with the communities in a way that's very is a harmonic, right? It's a harmony. So you don't get overrun by tourists. Tourists become part of the solution rather than the problem, and all those sort of things that go with sustainable tourism. We're going to be working on the next couple of weeks on a marketing plan or a marketing strategy that really is a 2021. So how do you start to roll this out and amplify it? But I think it's going to attract some attention, right? And the launch in January is going to be a little bit of a celebration, because it's really the culmination of a lot of effort from a lot of people over the course of more than 12 months. And I think what really sets this brand apart, if you think of it as like a brand, an outward-facing sort of story, the Mahoosic way, is that it's so strongly built on local input. The thinking that lays the foundation for it is not a marketing firm's, right? It's local people's aspirations for the future, which shape the narrative around the pledge, what you're trying to accomplish with the pledge, and the outward sort of facing part of that. So I think this is a really unique sort of story, and we're hoping that it's going to grab a bit of attention, right? So because the way this will get legs is that if people love it, they like it, they share it, they become part of it, they sign up for it, they get other people to do it, and so on. And then you start to build a whole momentum and a community around this notion of this region trying to figure out the puzzle of how do you have a strong tourism industry, but it's part of the solutions for the grand challenges that you have. So more on that to come, obviously, but that's, I think, going to be a really exciting step. As a community, I think you should be incredibly proud of the work that's been done and where you've got. It's a really fantastically well-developed pledge and sort of concept, and it's on a great foundation. And I think it's got a really nice outward-facing set of messages that go with it. So look forward to being part of that with you in early January.
Well, if David thinks all those things, then it must be true. He works worldwide on these things like this, and so that's high praise. And I think we should all give ourselves a pat on the back for coming this far with it. Again, like going back to kicking off this series of Zooms, it really is one of the things I'm most proud of that actually kept going during the pandemic. It would have been so easy to lose sight of this, but we didn't. We regathered in new ways and re-engaged in new ways, and here we are. And honestly, there's really so much to look forward to and a new team in place. So actually, before we get into Q&A, I would like to thank and acknowledge the committee itself, all the committee members, many of whom have been with us, but Amy Scott, Amy Halstead, Mia Purcell, Karolyn Castaldo, Kim Sparks, Loretta Powers, Vern Maxfield, Barbra Barrett, Jerome, Amy Bernard, Jessie Perkins, Robin Zinchuk, Donna Moreland, Mike Wilson, Carol-Ann Willette have all throughout the process been able to weigh in and add their expertise to all of this. So thank you so much for all of those who are here today. Now we can go into some Q&A time, and I'm happy to just open up the mic and or read some chats or whatever you'd like to do. So I see David waving his hand around. I'll switch to the, to the gallery view, and then I can see you all. Okay.
Just one little tiny thing to add to that, Jessie, too. I think it's remiss if we don't acknowledge the financial support that's come through the Northern Forest Centre and Maine Office of Tourism, right? And obviously there's been an enormous amount of volunteer effort locally, but some of the key pieces, need that little bit of sprinkle of grant funding. And so I think we should just call that out as well.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for that. Mike's waving his hand.
So on that note, I was actually going to, thank you, David. But I was going to raise this as well, because we have been able to, again, put together some funding to support the process, the CDA program and some of the work since then, and be able to bring David's team in to work with us on the pledge and all. I just want to flag that doesn't go on forever. And we are starting to talk within the committee about, how do we start to generate local funding and support to sustain this work long term. And that's not saying that we're kind of walking away from it. We're looking at ways that we can continue to, bring in some resources, but in the very near term, like this week, you may start to hear from the group around ways for local organizations and businesses to engage as partners and sponsors to keep this work going forward. So just to put that out there, that is an active conversation within the group and is really going to be critical. Again, I think we're in a really good place with the work, but that kind of next step of really figuring out how do we secure the long-term sustainability for this, and and what's the right scale and all, is an important piece of the conversation that's coming. So it's not a question.
It's a sobering, yes. No, it's really, it's so true. We have been really, really blessed with the staff time and that the Northern Forest Center has provided, as well as the contractors who have contributed to this. So yes, it hasn't been totally a volunteer effort, but thinking about how we go forward will definitely depend on answering some of those questions. So just something to mull on at this point. Anybody else out there? Quiet group. Anyone who was super enthusiastic about a certain pillar for a certain reason? Tony, you're waving. You need to unmute.
I'll just pipe up. Many of you on this chat already know is when I heard the reference to the train that myself and a few others in this program, as well as a lot of people in the region, have been working very hard on getting a passenger train expanded in Maine between Boston and Montreal with a stop in Bethel. And if any of you are interested in at least watching what we do, there's a couple groups. There's a local group that you all belong to, whether you know it or not, called the AOCCC, Androscoggin Oxford Coos County, and Mia is our coordinator, I guess we could say, but all the towns have signed pledges for that rail. And then if you want to look at a Facebook site, the Maine Rail Transit Coalition, we are very active in this legislative session to expand rail, and Bethel is high on the list of places of destination for the rail. I just want to share that with you.
Thank you, Tony. As I always say, I'm just sitting here in this train station waiting for the train to show up anytime now. We got the only passenger rail platform between was it Portland or Montreal, right? So, hey, any minute now, can't wait. Someone else, did Marcel, did you have something to say? No, any other?
No, I did not. Thank you, though.
Okay, I thought someone said you did. Any other hands raised out there? I see Kat. Go ahead, Kat.
I just want to applaud the work that has gone into this and listening to all of the fantastic things I've heard on all these Zooms. I look forward to being a part of it. And I'm particularly interested in what Vern was talking about in what ways can we engage local community members and get their buy-in. I think that's absolutely crucial for this to work as more than, just a tourism and visitor incentive. So write my name down, Vern, please.
That's what we like to hear. Kat, on the spot,
Will
but
do.
don't you have a new role with Heart and Soul? Or would you mind sharing that with the crowd? I'm not sure how much people know about that.
Yeah, certainly. So I was the project coordinator for the Mahoosic Heart and Soul regional project, which was the towns of Bethel, Newry, Greenwood, and Woodstock. I am now the Maine coach. So I'm working with different communities across the entire state of Maine, supporting people who are doing the role that I did here in the towns of Dexter, Chelsea, Hallowell, and Sydney, Maine. And looking at a new project in Van Buren, but very much still living in Bethel and part of the Bethel community.
Thanks, Kat. That is really, really cool. Another amazing asset that we have right here in our local community. Thank you so much. So anytime that we lose sight of things that you worked on here in Bethel, just feel free to remind us all, hey, we already did the research on this, or hey, we already had these conversations. I'm sure that would be much appreciated. Anybody else out there? Very contemplative group today.
I guess I would just say, I think it's easy to become contemplative about this because these are big, a lot of these are pretty big systemic issues that we're talking about. And so I think as we go forward, really, with this group to be, encourage us to be thinking about where and how do we find bite-sized pieces of this stuff that we can get some traction on. And just acknowledging that there's a lot, we're rolling a lot out under these pillars, and I think it's all important and interrelated. I think even in this forum, encouraging us to think about how do we keep some strategic rails on this so that we can be focused and get some things done. And even actually, I'm jotting notes that I think just listening to Mia's presentation and Vern's presentation, maybe some opportunity for us to think about how do we potentially combine the regional collaboration and the community engagement pieces. A lot of common topics coming up listening to those presentations. So just thinking about this is big stuff, and how do we allow ourselves to be as efficient as we get into it as we can be, and not kind of overwhelm ourselves with the scale of all this.
It sounded like me and I said the same thing, but we didn't get together. We did our own. We did our own report.
There's still time. That means it's doubly important, I guess. I think, going back to the historic meeting of the town's town managers and select, boy, I think that would be really, really important to try to communicate again, as I know you all are, usually this time of year is getting into budget time, right? So I mean, that's a huge planning piece for all the towns. So anyway, that's just one thing, but it doesn't make sense to tackle all these things all at once. And it seems almost necessary.
I'm very hopeful we can have another one of those meetings in the near future.
Did you hear that, Amy? Good. Lucy Abbott chimes in the chat, trying to figure out how we would start improving availability of housing. First steps, regulation, tax policy, where, access to transport and stores. And Mike adds regional collaboration on broadband. Yes, all of these things starting in January. 5 more minutes if anyone wants it. If not, we can wrap it up and give you back that time. Thank you again so much for joining us. Again, just kind of just the beginning. After all this work, we've got the research, we've got the cool brand, we've got the interested people. So what's holding us back? Nothing. Let's do it. Okay. All right. Have a great afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great job, Jessie. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.